Okay, so for this step, we're going to create a local folder and we're going to clone. But we're going to do one step before that, which is something I generally do after we clone, but I've decided I'm going to do it before, honestly, because there's a little bit of a nuance and it just makes it easier here. So before we go to do this next work, there's a link I've given you. So go ahead and click on it and just copy the content of it. Okay, so copy that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create this file called a get ignore file, and we're going to put it in both our public and our private repos. So this is the contents of the file that we're going to create, and I'll walk you through it. But this get ignore right here is the name of the file, not the whole VS Code. It's just the last part, and it's a funky file name because it starts with a dot. Generally, that's never the way we see files, but this is a special system file, and it's just good to have. Okay, so in your repo, so I'll start with my public one. It doesn't really matter. Okay, now I already have created it here. So what you would do is you would go ahead and do add file, create file, right? And that's where you would type, and it's not going to let me, but I'll just act like it. Get ignore, right? It might overwrite it. That'd be all right. So then I paste it. Okay, cool. And so here's where you've been all along just committing changes. And this is where you're about to learn how to commit them to your local system and then push them to GitHub. So that's coming, not what we're doing yet. In main, which is where you want it. And let's just go ahead and see if let's see if it'll actually commit on mine. Yeah, see, it wouldn't do it on mine because there's already a file there named that. So for you, you should be able to go ahead and hit commit and do that, no problem. And then what you're going to want to do is go to your public repo and do the same. I'm sorry, your private repo and do the same. And I am going to just get out of that. So again, you should be able to commit that file, no problem. Right? So I'm just going to search for my repos. I can always do it that way. Let's see if I have one on the private yet. Oh, I don't. So I can do it here. So you're going to do it on both of them. So here, add, create file. Okay. And it does go in what we call the root of your get ignore. Okay. And it's going to give you a template note. We're just going to paste in that content that I had you grab a minute ago. And then we'll go ahead and commit. Get ignore, commit, that one worked fine. Okay. Now, one thing, and we'll see this in a minute, there's chances are this won't show up in our local system, but this README file should. Okay, that's done. And again, if you don't get it, don't worry about it. I can walk you through it. Come talk to me. It's not a big deal if for some reason you didn't. Okay, so now that we have that, now let's actually go into the work we're doing here. So I'm going to have you create a folder on your local system. And I do this with the suggestion because there are students that often take some of my classes at the same time, and what we're about to do could collide. And it's just good organization. So this is the kind of format. If you're taking a different class or a different semester, just follow the format. CIT, so it's 82 is the course, SP semester, and the year. Okay. Now, how you create this depends on your operating system, and where you create it really depends on you. But I just say somewhere on your system have this created. Okay. So I'm going to go into my file manager on my Windows system, right? I'm going to go into, you could put it on desktop, I typically don't like to put stuff on desktop because it gets too crowded, but you do you. So I'm going to go into systems or go into docs, and you can see I've done this before, right? So I'm going to do new folder, and then I could either type it now, by the way, looks like it didn't. Go ahead and do, because I hit off somehow, my keyboard's acting really funky. Let me do this and do a rename. Oh, I had to click into it to do it. Okay. Oh, I'm working on my laptop, and my laptop keyboard. Hold on, I'm not going to torture you. Hold on. I love my laptop keyboard. Okay, I don't love it, but that's what happens. All right, so what you want, again, you won't see these other ones unless you're taking another class. So you could have done this other ways. There's actually ways in VS Code to do it, but I'm just going to show you the direct way to do it, which is to create that subdirectory here. Okay, so now once you have it, now I'm going to show you how to open it in VS Code. There's actually ways you could do it from the command line in Windows if you ever wanted to, but for this case, I'm going to go ahead and close out. So however on your system, figure out where you want to put that, what I call the base folder, because in that folder, then we'll create the repos inside of there so they're organized for you. Okay, so by the way, I should not have closed, so let me just go ahead and reopen it. The repo, our organization, because I'm going to need, and I want you to actually have your private one open, and we'll come back in a minute for something we need for that. Okay, so now over here in VS Code, this is where we left it last time. Now we can open folder. And when you open folder, now you're going to navigate to wherever you place that base folder. For me, it was here. And here is my file. There it is. And then I can either double click, right? And actually here, if I double click, what happens is it's looking for something inside of there because it's thinking I'm drilling down. So if I click once into it and I just say select folder, then it opens that root folder for me. And now that's the place from which I will now do the rest of the work. So you just want to have this set up. Now I will through the course show you different ways to open the repos that are inside of here, because what will happen is these repos will end up looking just like folders inside of this base folder. And they are like folders, but they have some special things that connect into GitHub, which you'll learn as we go through. Okay, so now we have created the folder. I've shown you how to open it in VS Code, and now we're going to do the most important thing that you're going to do for this one, which is to clone. So cloning will feel like, for some people, if they've never done it, copying, but it's copying plus, it's copying and more. So over here in GitHub, where we've created our repos, we're going to clone them into our local system, right? So this is out on the cloud, and now it'll become part of our local system. And then from here on out in the course, you will work locally and complete something you'll learn soon called the GitHub workflow, or the Git workflow, to complete your files so that I can then and your fellow classmates can see it. Okay, so the command we're going to end up using is called git clone, and we're going to need a URL. Okay, so the URL will be based on whichever repo we're cloning at the time. All right, so come back now to VS Code, and in here, I want you to bring back, okay, the terminal. Okay, so here. And before we do anything else, I want you to see, and hopefully this is true on your side, that, and you, by the way, if you're on Windows, you also might have PowerShell here, and PowerShell is totally okay. I believe it'll work fine. Like if I was to do git -- version, it actually has Git as well. I just like using Bash, but if you have PowerShell, you're welcome to use it as well. But notice what happened here is it opened this default directory. And how do I know that? Now on Mac, you may not see it as clearly, but you can always type pwd, say, show me the current working directory, and that will show me where I'm currently opened. Now, it may be a little confusing at the beginning because what shows here and what is your current working directory when you first open the terminal will be the same, but then you could change it throughout your course of working with it. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so now we're not completely ready, but I want to make sure I'm in that base folder. I'm going to type git clone. Don't hit enter yet, because what you need is that URL, right? So the URL that you're going to get is you may say get way too many times, is in GitHub under your private. And please do select your private one, and then come over to code. And there's different ways to clone. Notice it says clone, and we're cloning. So we're going to use HTTPS. There's SSH. There's a GitHub CLI, which is a command line interface. But for somebody just starting out, and generally for definitely your first couple of years in programming, doing HTTP cloning is totally fine. So what you can do is select that and copy it, or it has this nice little copy here. Okay, so now then it gives you a little indicator that you have it. So now move back, and I'm going to use Alt-Tab to VS Code. And now I'm ready to paste, okay? Now, don't hit enter yet, because what I'm about to tell you is the important piece of cloning is it has to authenticate, basically log in to your GitHub. Now, it's actually, there's multiple ways to do this, and there's something called a web token that I show some of my JavaScript students. But for you, and in the beginning, all I'm going to tell you is when you hit enter here, right, it's going to give you some options. So watch me do it before you do it so that you understand what to select here. Okay. So when I hit enter, I immediately start cloning without doing the script that I need. No, actually, it is. Oh, it is. Oh, there it is. I was going to say, this is the thing I was hoping to get. Just took it a minute to show up. So in this case, it's stopping and it's like, oh, hey, you have to sign into GitHub. Do you want to sign in on the browser? Do you have a code, or do you want to do the token? Again, the token is another way to do it. Easiest way to do this is just sign in with your browser. And what will happen here is it'll just flash over to your browser. And because you're already logged in, it's exchanging some information. Nothing really happens here. But when you come back to VS Code, what should happen if this works successfully? Now, that's the key is this is that critical step you want to make sure works successfully, right? You should see a new folder under the base folder, and you should see no error messages here. That's cool. That's great, because that often is the step that can throw, depending on your setup. Like if you have a firewall there, it may have blocked it. If you didn't log in, if you hadn't for some reason had GitHub and logged in, you might have ran into something there. But hopefully this is much better than it used to be, this process. So now you're going to do the same thing for your public repo. Okay. And if I go and find my public repo, and I grab that same URL, copy here, I could just do this. I'm going to do the, I could do git. No, I need to come down here. Git, easy for you to say. For some reason, mine's hung up. So, by the way, this is not bad to learn. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit kill it, because for some reason, oh, I don't know why that was, but let me just go ahead and hit bash to come back to it. Yeah, happens. That is kind of weird though. For me, probably one of my local systems. So now I'm still in that base folder. You shouldn't have to change anything here. And now you do git clone and paste. Now, if for some reason you were trying to do the public, you can only clone once. Okay. And I'm going to click at the end, or I'm going to use my arrow to then, because that white is just highlighted. So now you just make sure you're cloning your public, because you've already cloned your private. And if you accidentally try to clone your public again, it'll give you an error. So now in this case, it's not going to ask you any of that login. And you're good to go, hopefully. And now you can see, if you see both your public and your private, that means you did it successfully. And we can stop and move on to the next one. Anyway, reach out. That's a really important step if you need any help.